In the last episode of Safe House, we talked about leadership
Mhm.
and the characteristics of leadership. I think we went through the 9 signs of effective leadership.
We did.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about how you get from here to there. So we're going to lead you.
Hope you're willing to follow.
Hope you're willing to follow.
Yes.
So if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about leadership and how you can implement this into your relationship situation, stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, hey, hey.
What's up, Safe House? Andre going back to Fat Albert stuff. What's going on, Safe House?
What's going on, Safe House? How's everybody feeling out there?
Andre's feeling. It's usually me that's extra happy. Today is you.
I feel like I'm my normal sort of chill self.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Unless am I showing a little bit extra?
I don't know.
I don't
No,
have
you're
that.
fine.
I'm not singing or nothing like
No,
that.
that's my job.
Right.
not- Yeah, don't be trying to take over my stuff.
I'm
sir.
not. I'm not.
you-
That's
you-
your job alone.
Exactly.
My job here is to be the calming voice.
Exactly.
In the midst of the activity. So you all, if you could throw a like on us, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and then the algorithm will let you know when we're publishing content.
Yes,
We want
it
you to
will.
be notified so you can catch up on some of this good info. Make sure you give us comments below so that we can, one, react to them. Two, it tells the algorithm that we're doing something interesting here on the YouTubes.
1 minute you like Barry White,
Right.
and the next minute I don't even know. I don't even know how this episode is gonna turn out. Because this is funny.
Multiple personality disorder going on here.
Like, what are we
Which
doing?
Andre are we dealing with right now? All right.
But I love it.
All right.
I love it.
So before I get further off track and show another one of my altars, let's get into the content.
Yes, we are talking about leadership.
Leadership.
Yes.
You are Miss Giggles today.
I'm sorry. Yes, we are talking about leadership. So in our last episode, we talked about, obviously, the characteristics of leadership. So today, in this episode, what we really wanted to do is how do we create a path to making that happen? So those are the types of things that we want to talk about today. And so it's kind of funny because, like you said, some of the feedback, that was actually some of the feedback. How do you get there?
Yeah.
And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking actually about a cheat code for the single women. I mean, it can even be for the single men too. But I want to give a shout out to my sister, Rebecca Watson. So she is waiting to be married. She understands that she's a wife. And so as we talk about a path to leadership, she already owns her own business. So she's obviously a well-established leader in her own right. But what she wasn't well-established in is, how do I be led in marriage?
Yeah.
Because she has a very strong personality, and and some leaders do have strong personalities.
Absolutely.
So the work that she has been doing to develop that part, because she understood that she's going to be a wife, she started reading books on how to be a wife. Fasting for her husband, praying for her husband, even though she may not know who he is, but she has been really diligent over the past few years of just doing that.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying all that to say that there's prep work in the waiting. When you know that that's what God is calling you to do. So a lot of times, like you said, when we say we want to get married, but do you really understand what you're saying when you want to be a husband? Do you want to be a wife? And there's prep work actually that goes into that. And so I just want to give her a big shout out, because she has really been putting in the work to understand, how that changes her dynamic in terms of how she now has to be able to operate in this marriage setting because she hasn't had to do that. And so that's, to me, is a big cheat code for the singles, is when you start talking about getting married, you really have to begin to study about what that means to become a husband or a wife, that there is prep work. The prep work isn't just dating the person.
Right.
The prep work is really understanding, what role am I now getting ready to walk into? Because that's a big leadership role for men and for women. Women have to know, like, what does it mean to be a helpmate? What does it mean to be a companion? Because that's why women were created. Adam was alone. And so he created Eve so that she could be a helpmate to him. And so once again, to me, that helpmate is the one who's like not in charge of everything, but you're in charge of being the helpmate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you really have to understand, like, what that role is. And so, like I said, she's been really putting in the work for that. So congratulations, girlie.
All right. Well, good job, Rebecca.
Yeah.
And that lesson applies not just to women, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because males, we sometimes don't necessarily try to lead from the right place. We mimic what we see as leadership in our lives, and we say, okay, that formula somehow works. Whether it works or not, that's what we witness. And then that's what we take into marriage. So if we see our fathers being a very domineering male in the household, not knowing the whole situation between the father and the mom, we tend to say, okay, well, this worked for our household. It seems like it worked, right? And therefore, that's the model I'll take in the relationship. And sometimes it's the complete antithesis, right, of good
absolutely.
leadership, right?
Yeah.
If my father was a pretty stand-up guy, but my uncles, they were into some things, right? And so, in terms of having, extras on the side and a few other things. This is not my good Uncle Charlie. My good Uncle Charlie is a straight arrow.
He's
right?
a perfect example of what that looks like.
He does not, Uncle Charlie does no wrong, right?
I'm sure he does, but if you're outside looking at his marriage and everything that he does, he's definitely a good role model.
He's a great role model, right?
Yeah.
But I have others that are more about the womanizing, the substances and the various things, and their version of leadership is, hey, I come home and I bring a certain amount here and things are paid. Don't mess with me about whatever else I do. I lead by providing, and then I don't have anything to say about anything else, and therefore you shouldn't have anything to say about what I'm doing, which, once again, if you're a young boy and you see that as normal, you're like, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to do, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then it's not until you get another picture of what normal looks like, or someone introduces an alternative normal to you, that you start to say, wait a minute, I've learned and repeated lessons for a very long time that may not necessarily be true.
Yeah, it is true. That is true.
So then how do we start to break this down? Because I really like what you described with Rebecca. And so for the brothers out here, start to get around people that you can that can actually model leadership for you, right? Start to ask the real questions, because I can tell you that some of us out here that may look like we're doing leadership right now didn't always do it right. We learned lessons the hard way. We bumped our head against ceilings. You got some scraped knees and some other things. Some things still dealing with the consequences of past mistakes, right? But we're working through them in a graceful way. And so, definitely get around God-fearing men, praying men, submitted men. Because I can tell you, a man that has mastered following would be a great teacher for leadership.
Yeah. Well, that's real talk. And I know we talked about the last time, like you said, when we start, one of the key things that we want people to understand about, creating a path is development.
Yeah.
And we talked about, like I said, one of the best books to read about, if you're trying to figure out how to develop yourself as a husband or a wife is the Bible, and so in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 17 through 28, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to give you a reference. I like what verse 17 says, therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is, because God does have a will for marriage. He has a plan for what he wants that to look like. And so even in verse 21, it says submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. So if both people have reverence for Christ, then it's easy to submit
Mm-hmm.
to each other. So it's not like we have this competition and who's going to lead and who's going to do what. It's like we both have enough wisdom and discernment to recognize what our roles are going to be.
Yeah.
And then as you go further, it says in verse 22, it says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior." It says, "Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands." And I know we're like, everything, but that's what the word of God says. It says in everything to their husbands, and so you want to kind of share what it says for husbands?
Yeah, well, it says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water of the word, so that he might present to the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself."
What I love about that is that it's sacred.
Yeah.
That when a husband has to be able to treat his wife as if she's sacred,
Mm.
and so to me, those are the questions, when we start saying, okay, developing leadership, because those are the spaces where you have to know you can lead in those spaces, and to say, okay, am I capable of treating my wife as if she was sacred?
Yeah.
And even, loving my wife as if it was me. How do I have to be able to say, how do I love myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I loving myself well enough so that now I can demonstrate that to my wife?
Yeah. And can I love myself? Can I lead myself? Have I led myself?
Absolutely.
Right. Because what's so key about this set of scriptures is that your leadership is delegated authority.
Yeah.
You're leading out of a delegated authority, which means you can't lead out of your own heart space.
That's good. Yeah.
Right. You have to lead from a godly point of view. Right. And so I think where you said earlier, wives, submit yourself to husbands, and the women are like, ugh. I do think there are a lot of men out there that, okay, they take the scripture in terms of leadership and they say, well, I'm the leader, but then they lead from a heart space, and we know what the Bible says about your heart, right?
It's continually wicked.
It's
just wicked.
It's wicked, right?
Yeah.
And deceptive, and so, but leading from a delegated authority space, I now have to recognize that even with delegated authority, I have to check in with who delegated the authority to me.
Yeah.
To verify that I'm operating within the parameters of the authority that they gave me, right? And the more repetition I have with using that delegated authority, the more autonomy God will give me to be able to make those decisions on my own, right? But when I'm new to this, I got to constantly check in. God, is this what we want me to do? God, is this the way we should go? God, is this? But as I do that more and more, and I start to understand in God's heart, I exchange my heart for God's heart, and I change my will for God's will, I now can start to discern in a way that, okay, this is godly, this is not, right? Doesn't hurt that we should always check in, right? It doesn't hurt to check in, but once again, we have that problem in society today. I'll be speaking about it tomorrow at church. It's just, our heart posture, or we've convinced ourselves that what we feel in our heart is true.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
so then I lead you from that space. My heart says you should be doing this, so you should. My heart says you should not be doing this, so you should. You should do these things versus from a godly mindset.
And that's why we talked about, even in the first episode, about humility. And servanthood, because humility and servanthood takes me out of my own heart space.
Yeah.
And it not only puts me in a different heart space, but it puts me in a different head space.
Yes.
Too. And so now that I'm being humble and I'm presenting myself as a servant, then the marriage looks different. The relationship looks different.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a very key thing in how you develop it, like understanding who I am in that space.
Yeah.
Because once I understand who I am in that space, that's how I can learn how to develop the skill set that it's going to take to be effective.
And you have to get to a place of maturity
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
intellectual honesty
hmm
where you can be transparent with yourself
hmm
about your deficits.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because we all have deficits.
We all have
Yeah.
deficits, right? We're born with them. We were
Yeah.
born in a sin. So our first deficit is we have a sin nature, right? So it's always going to be there. It's always going to be present, and we're going to have to war against it, right? So that's there. And then we have these things, these lessons that we learned through life, through repetition, that even though they've been repeated a lot, that doesn't necessarily make them true or valid, right? They've just been repeated a lot, right?
That's true.
And so now I have to go back to God and say, okay, is this really a lesson or is this a deficit? Is the way that I should interact with my wife, I've witnessed this, can you send me people in my life that I can trust, that I can confess this to?
Yeah.
And now I can start to triangulate my experiences with, prayer and then other godly people in my life.
Yeah.
So that now I can start to get a better picture of, wait, the thing that I thought was normal this whole time is not.
Yeah.
It's a deficit,
Yeah.
right? And now I need to deal with that as a deficit versus, just moving forward like it's not there because I'm in this quote unquote role of leadership.
Yeah. It's kind of like continuing education.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing about being married, and being in a relationship, because it's like it's evolving, it's developing, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. You know what I mean? And so that to me are some of the key spaces of developing. The other place where you get to really develop is, like you said, when both of us understand, like you said, that we both have very unique gifts and talents that we bring to that. Like I said, keep going back to Adam and Eve. Like I said, she was a compliment to him. So even when you would use the word deficit, whatever your deficits are, your spouse should be able to come in and compliment that.
And buttress and support that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And no one says that everything is a perfect compliment. It's not always that way. But definitely in areas that I need help, two of us is better than one of us.
Oh, yeah, that's the word says that too in Proverbs. Is it a Proverbs or Ecclesiastes? I have to look that up because I want to be right about that.
Because sometimes we both can have a deficit in the same place.
It's in Ecclesiastes. Two is better than one. Yes.
Yeah. And we can have a deficit in the same place, but if we both are putting our heads together and maybe involving, we both recognize, we have a deficit when it comes to our financial management. Yeah. Right? Let's agree to involve a third person in our financial planning so that we can have some insight, right? We both have a deficit and now we're working that. Yeah. Versus you may be really good at budgeting, right? But I make all the money. Right. It would be foolish to say, you know what, I make all the money, but I'm just bad at budgeting. But because I make all the money, because I'm the man, I need to be in control. It's like, no, let me swallow that pride and say, you know what? Yeah. Here's what I make. Give me a little allowance or something like that. I'm going to squander this. Yeah. Right.
We've had that discussion.
Right. I'm going to squander this if you leave this in my hands.
Andre would squander all of our money.
and you know what? Best decision I ever made, because you look up and you got savings, you got investments, you got money tucked here, there, and everywhere. You're not living check to check anymore. No bill collectors are calling. Yeah. And it's all when you sort of release that pride and says, man, I don't have to be the controller here, right? Yeah. And that's what a good leader recognizes. When a good leader recognizes his deficits, then it gives him room to be able to recognize the skill and capability in others, right? Yeah. And even invest in that.
But I also think too, like you said, when a good leader recognizes that, then like you said, it makes room for the other person to come in, the other spouse to come in. And to me, that creates value and it creates influence. And it's kind of like what we had talked about before in the last episode was about following. It's like, when you're creating room for me to come in and assist and to do all of those things, then it is easy for me to follow you. Yeah. Because I know that you're not just making decisions unilaterally. Yeah. And that there is room to discuss. And like you said, and when you realize what your deficit is,
Mhm.
You know, I think we had talked about this, like sometimes we have a deficit in details.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and you're the big dreamer and you want to do all these things, but I'm like, now you make sometimes feel like I'm pouring cold water on your dream
yeah,
because now
yeah.
I'm coming along with with the
With the
details.
details, and I'm the detail guy, right?
Right.
I think like an
Yeah.
engineer when
He
it comes
is the
to
detail
everything,
guy.
right? And I don't know where the culture has gotten this from, but for some reason, the culture, at least when it comes to spiritual things, we basically it feels more spiritual the more abstract, less detailed it is,
Yeah.
right? And so, ignorant optimism doesn't equal faith, right?
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't. And it's like for some reason we only believe it's faith when it's fuzzy, when it's ill-defined, when Jesus said, "Count up the cost so that you know when you go to build a house that you can achieve it, or else you look like a fool," right? The Bible specifically talks about that. And even when it comes to examples of Noah building the ark, no, he didn't necessarily know what God was going to do, but he had
Hmm.
very
Oh
specific
yeah, he did have very
instructions
specific
for
instructions.
what
Yeah.
kind of wood he could use, how much measurement he had to take, what kind of animals he needed to take. We serve a God that's about specific things
Right.
and
Yeah,
details, right?
God is in the details.
And so, I think people of God, we need to come out of this place that just because we're uncomfortable with details, that somehow it removes the spiritual nature or the faith involved, because we still, despite the details, we still need to believe what God said.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And believing what God said. The details allows us to pray specifically for what God says.
Hmm.
A detail, we ain't got enough money in the bank to do this. So God, you need to fill in this gap. Yes, we can pray about the big thing we want to do, but we need to also pray about all the steps in between.
Yeah. Because I think that's what kind of leads us into the testing
Yeah.
part. Because you have to know that your leadership will always be tested.
Yeah.
So as you're developing it, and it should be tested.
Yeah.
Anything that, any good person who's inventing something, knows that now I got to figure out how to test it.
I got to test it.
Because I got to make sure it works.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
So it's like your leadership skills in this space are going to be, they're just going to be tested. There are going to be different things that are going to happen. It could be adversity.
Well, yeah, this is another point, right? It's we look at testing like a rubber stamp, right? It's like, hey, we had this idea, test it, boom, 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 go, right?
Right, yeah.
But the whole point of testing is to highlight and bring out flaws. It's to bring out all the errors and the issues, right?
Yeah.
So that we can take that thing, correct them, and then launch again,
Yeah.
right? And and once again, I think it's a personality thing because it's not a faith thing. I think you've had some people just associate faith with being ignorant, right? But the whole idea of testing and trying, the Bible has many scriptures that talk about testing and trying something, right? And putting things to the test. Don't put God to the test,
Right.
But putting things to the test. And so this whole idea of, hey, wait a minute. There's evidence when we do things. There's outcomes when we do things, and that we shouldn't learn from those outcomes, use those outcomes as tools to get better and then retry again. I don't know where that came from.
I love what you're saying though, because sometimes what we do, and I know, even as wives, because like you said, when we have this idea of, like you said, the husband is supposed to know everything, he's the covering and he's, all of that. I also want to, while I'm saying that, to be able to say that, we can't lead from stereotypical spaces.
Yeah.
We have to lead from real places, because everybody's marriage is different and whatever. But as soon as I start stereotyping,
Yeah.
then that's going to be a problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it's one of those spaces where it's like once I know that okay, like you said, that it didn't work, I can't hold that against you.
Mhm.
It's like love keeps no record, And so once again, I like what you said, we gotta figure out how to launch again.
Yeah.
Because you had said that in the last episode about how, like you said, we have a track record.
Yeah.
But do I let your track record keep you from being the leader? Or do we, like you said, do we have this conversation where now, like you said, this is my deficit, because now you have to be able to say this. It's when we have our real like come to Jesus moment.
Yeah. And this is what shows real leadership, right?
Yeah.
Because once again, stubbornness is not leadership.
Right,
We've
true.
also associated stubbornness
That is true.
with leadership,
Yeah.
right? When actually that's the antithesis of leadership. Because good
Mhm.
leaders will quickly recognize, you know what, wait a minute, that is not my skill. My zone of genius is not details.
Right.
When it comes to doing things. I can
Mhm.
come up with ideas, I can come up with vision, right? But filling in the blanks and doing all the little nitnoids and stuff like that, I need someone to help me do that.
Mhm.
And the minute you one, it frees you because you don't have to figure it all out. The minute you can stop taking it personally when someone with the details comes along
Mhm.
and starts to fill in the blanks,
Mhm.
right? It frees you.
Yeah,
Right.
that is true. Yeah, it does.
Two, the detail person is now in their zone of genius,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh yeah, I want to figure out the details and the questions and the things and ask these things, right?
Mhm.
And figure all those things out. So no, I think, when it comes to testing and refining, we can get tested, and you mentioned when we go through adversity, but we can get tested when we go through an idea. I don't want to discount that our track record still does speak.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the track record is the entirety of the track record. And what do I mean
Yeah.
by that? It's not just that we did something, but how did we respond when that something didn't go as
Yeah.
expected?
Yeah.
Right.
That is true.
And so, if you came up with a bad idea and then we had to live with these nasty consequences and we never revisited or decided how we were going to work together through these consequences, we just had to deal with them.
Right.
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 Then
True.
then what you're training me for is every time you have an idea, we're about to suffer.
Yeah.
It's like there's a track record of suffering. There's a track record, but if I have an idea and I'm leading us someplace and it doesn't pan out, and I'm humble enough to say that I didn't account for this and this,
Yeah.
right?
That's good. Yeah.
And you know what? I should have leaned into this or that, or can you help me with this? Do we have the space and room to try again?
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah.
discuss it. No, we can't. Okay, fine. The consequences from this, how do we work through this together? Right?
And that takes grace and mercy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't have grace and mercy, then you need to start to develop that right now, because in marriage you need that all day. That's why the Bible says his mercies are renewed every day.
Yeah.
Because you need it, because somebody's going to falter. Somebody's not going to get something right.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, good leaders don't get everything right.
They don't.
But if I feel like also, even when the leader falls, if he has a soft space
Mhm.
to fall on,
Yeah.
when he does, it's like, okay, you know what? That's okay, babe.
Yeah.
That didn't work. You know what? Let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of couples sometimes struggle with that in that place of communication.
Yeah.
But the reason why we struggle so much in that place of communication is because now we're feeling the consequences. We're
Yeah.
feeling the effects of the adversity
Yeah.
of now being in this situation.
Yeah.
And so, but that's coming from feelings. That's not coming from, anything godly. It's like, okay, we just in a jacked up situation now.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
I'm just in my feelings about the whole thing.
Well, on the heels of that, I'm going to say something pretty controversial. And this is for my brothers out there that are leading or desire to lead, right? Especially those of us that are churched, right? Because we use a certain vernacular around how we lead in the church and how
Right.
we lead our spouses, our wives, our future forever people, whatever have you. Be very careful of what you attach God to. Be very, very careful
Yeah.
of what you attach God to. And what do I mean by that? Because you may have an idea, you may have a vision, you may have a point of view that's very, very, very strong, and you could feel it, you could see it, and you could taste it, right? And you remember, the Bible says your heart is deceitfully wicked.
Yeah.
So your heart will convince you of things that are not of God. You feel it, but they're not of God. But then what happens is you use God as a bargaining chip, as a lever,
Yeah.
to convince people of the validity of your idea. And then that thing goes south. And so now you have hurt God's reputation with this other person,
Yeah.
right? You are responsible for tarnishing the reputation of God in this other person's eyes. And I'm going to say that directly because you invoked God in order to get your way,
Mhm.
right? So that's why
Yeah,
you have
that's
to be very, very careful on how we represent God in our desires and our ideas, right? And there's nothing wrong with us saying, look, I believe I feel God. Because if you feel God saying this, I believe I feel God saying this, you can lean to your wife. I don't know if you're hearing anything, but man, can we pray about
Yeah,
this?
and
Can we
we've
seek some?
definitely had those
Yeah,
discussions
I
about
believe
that.
I
Yeah.
believe I hear God saying
Yeah.
for us to do this,
Mhm.
right? But if I say I hear God saying this, we're gonna do this, and let's go now, and you
Yeah.
need to follow me, woman, right? And things go haywire, then now, once again, you've helped tarnish the reputation of two people in the
Yeah.
eyes of your wife, you and God.
Yeah. And not that it's irreparable. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do the repair work, but it's definitely like crashing your car in a ditch.
Yeah. So
You know?
just be careful,
Gotta
brothers.
have insurance.
Yeah, just be careful, brothers. But
No.
and so once again, I think this is where humility helps, because this is where we can pray and seek God together.
Yeah.
That's
the refining.
That's the refining.
Yeah, that's the refining.
Good corporate CEOs generally don't lead top down. What happens is a good corporate CEO has a trusted set of lieutenants, a circle. He comes up with an idea or something that he wants to do. Rather than him just doing it, he will pull in his trusted group of folk to figure out how we're going to do it, because he's going to rely on these folks to sell that thing throughout the organization and then have his back when you go through all of the difficult times, right? So if you're the CEO of your household, well, guess what? When I have the idea, I'm bringing in my trusted inner circle, right?
Yeah.
And then I want her to bathe that thing in prayer, and for us to talk about it and to talk about the ifs and the what ifs and all these other things, right? And so until we get to a place where we can operate as a team, then I'd really step back and say, okay, maybe I need to rethink about how I'm leading or my leadership approach.
Yeah, that's real talk, because like you said, and it's humility. Even there's humility and submission.
Yeah.
Too, when we talk about that refining space, because like you said, even when you mess up, because like I said, I can be a leader and I mess up too. Now there's a way that you can speak to me, because you know how, like, when things get really messed up, we're harsh, we're very critical,
Yeah.
we're all of those things. Humility says, okay, let me not come that way. Because as a matter of fact, if I come that way, that's going to do more damage.
Absolutely.
So humility always makes you stop.
Yeah. Humility on both sides, right?
Yeah,
because there's humility on the side of the person that had the idea, the vision, right? And then there's humility on the side of the person that they have the "I told you so" card that they can now play.
Absolutely.
Right? They got the Uno reverse, right? It's like,
I've had a couple of those.
Yeah. This thing went south.
Yeah.
And now I've got my Uno reverse and I'm ready to play it. I told you so, right?
Yeah.
Bam, or even the sort of passive aggressive, right?
Yeah.
I am going to agree enough to let your idea blow up in your face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's not a place of humility, right?
Yeah.
That because really, if we're in a place of refinement, right? I recognize that any idea has a percentage of failure attached to it.
That's good. Yeah,
right?
that's good.
Any idea that we have
yeah.
has a percentage of failure attached to it. And so if we're doing this as a team, my responsibility is to, if we fail, how do we recover? And in what way do we recover, right?
I just like that part. Like you said, it's like any idea has a percentage of failure. It's kind of like birth control pills.
Yeah.
It's like 99.9%. So that means and 1% is a lot.
1% is all it has to happen.
You can have a baby.
It has to happen one time, right? And you got a whole baby, right? It's not like you have 1%.
Whole baby.
It's not like you have 1% of a baby.
Right.
It fails that one time, you got a whole kid.
Right. That you got
for 20 plus years, right?
Right. That's real talk. I mean, I like that you brought that point out, because once again, I don't think I've never really thought about it.
Yeah.
From that perspective, like you said, when we're doing stuff, we're just like, okay, well, let's go.
It's guaranteed to work.
Right. It's guaranteed to work.
No. And I think, having that idea of, okay, if everything has a percentage opportunity to fail, once again, there's a recovery component of it too. There's maybe a try again component of it too. There's a keeping, because as much as you are frustrated, the person with the idea is disappointed.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah. That is true.
And
Yeah.
so
That's real talk.
how do you restore them and say, you know
Yeah.
what, babe, the idea didn't work, but I knew you were trying to do the
Hmm.
best that you
Yeah.
could given what you had.
Yeah.
I know you were really trying to take us to a next place. It didn't pan out. You know, I'm here for you.
Hmm.
If we're going to try again, that's fine. If we're not going to try again, you know, those
Yeah.
supporting and
Yeah.
affirming words
Yeah.
that refines that we're still a
Yeah.
team, you know?
That's why the refining part is key too. That's why it's at the end.
Yeah.
Because once again, because like I said, our leadership is evolving. It's changing. And we get to be the, along with God, it's like we get to refine it. Like you
Yeah.
said, it didn't work. But like you said, how do we now make it work? Let's go in, make some changes, do whatever,
How do we recover? How do we do
Yeah, how
something
do we
different?
recover? Yeah.
Yeah, how do we do
Yeah.
something different? Okay, this wasn't it. Something else is it. Or how do we pause for a while and sort of restore? How do we deal with the fallout of whatever this idea was? Whatever. But it's all a process.
Yeah.
And this is
It's
what
all
makes
it's a journey.
it's a journey. And
It really is.
this is what makes love a skill,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
during this time that love and purpose overrides the negativity of
Yeah.
the event.
No, yeah, that's real talk. Love is really the foundation
Yeah.
of it all. Because the song "What Love Got to Do with It." Love has
Everything
everything
to do with it.
with leadership.
Right, right.
With leadership, it has everything to do with leadership. Oh man, I don't know about nobody else, but I done got me some nuggets in
Rich.
this. Right, so I feel like we're in our refining
We absolutely are.
stage.
Absolutely are.
Some things didn't pan out the way that we wanted them to. And like you said, and we've definitely had to go back to the drawing board on some things. And like I said, I also think refining is, like you said, when you're empty nesters.
Mhm.
Like I said, we spent, like you said, the last 25 plus years being parents.
Yeah.
And so now we now have to go back and kind of just refine our relationship
Yeah.
together, because now it's just me and you.
Yeah. We got grown kids doing their own things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's a good thing. It's a good
It is a
journey.
good thing, yeah.
We got this focus and safe
Mhm,
house.
yeah.
We've got a few things going on, and it's good. I
Yeah.
think it's given us the room and the space to do this.
It absolutely has.
Rather than changing diapers, we can think about leadership.
We're leading you guys, and hopefully
All
you're
right.
willing to follow.
All right, y'all. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell.
Hit the
with
bell.
notifications. Let us know if you got led today down the path.
Yeah.
If we led you towards leadership. Let us know if there's some things that came out today that made you think about leadership in a relationship context. It made you think a little differently.
Just remember the 3 keys that we mentioned too.
Yep.
Also, development
Testing.
and refinement. If
Development.
you can remember those 3 things as you're building leadership skills in your marriage, and like you said, and even to be thinking about that when you're single, to be thinking about, okay, how am I developing it? Understanding that it's going to be tested and understanding that it's going to be refined. I think it gets you to longevity in marriage.
And that's the goal.
Yes, that is absolutely the goal. We love you guys.
We love you all. We hope you all have an awesome, awesome, awesome time in the Lord. And with that, and as we always close every...
Awesome time. This guy. He has just been on it today. Listen. And with that,
we say peace.